Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. The desperate knocks on car windows echoed through the rain, each ignored plea, taking another breath from the child inside the ambulance. In the harsh glare of emergency lights, the paramedic watched as another set of taillights disappeared into the storm without slowing. 5 minutes since the engine died. 20 minutes to the hospital. One life hanging in the balance. The isolated highway stretched endlessly in both directions, black asphalt gleaming under sheets of relentless rain. Inside the ambulance, monitors beeped with increasing urgency as the paramedic raced between the driver's seat and the dying engine to his small patient, whose breathing grew more labored with each passing minute. Outside, cars appeared from the darkness only to vanish just as quickly, their drivers locked behind rolled-up windows in comfortable ignorance. "Please," the paramedic shouted at the next vehicle, his uniform soaked through, raindrops mixing with tears of frustration on his face. 3 cars had passed already, 3 chances gone. The boy wouldn't survive much longer without help. In the distance, bright headlights cut through the darkness, approaching fast. A massive vehicle, different from the others. The paramedic raised his hand one more time, hope fading with each second. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. The paramedic, James Cortez, had been in emergency services for 15 years, but never had he felt this helpless. The ambulance's engine had seized completely, something electrical fried in the downpour. Inside, 8-year-old Ethan Miller lay unconscious, his oxygen levels dropping steadily after a severe asthma attack complicated by pneumonia. Every second mattered. "Please, stop!" James screamed at the passing sedan, his voice breaking. The driver briefly made eye contact before accelerating away. James slammed his palm against the ambulance door in frustration, the cold metal stinging his skin. This remote stretch of Highway 16 saw little traffic after midnight, and the storm had reduced visibility to almost nothing. The hospital was 20 minutes away by car, an eternity in Ethan's condition. The boy's parents had been following in their car but had gone ahead to alert the hospital when the ambulance first showed signs of trouble. Now, James was alone with his dying patient and a radio that couldn't reach dispatch through the mountains. He checked Ethan again, his lips taking on a bluish tint, then returned to the road, waving frantically as the approaching headlights grew brighter. The massive vehicle slowed, its tires hissing against the wet asphalt as it pulled onto the shoulder. The black, customized Ford Raptor came to a stop, its engine still rumbling powerfully against the storm. Through the rain-streaked windshield, James couldn't make out the driver's face, only a silhouette of an impressively large man. For a moment, James feared the vehicle would pull away like all the others, but then the driver's door swung open. The man who stepped out seemed to fill the entire roadway. 6'5" of solid muscle, wearing a soaked black t-shirt that clung to his frame. Recognition flickered in James's exhausted mind, but the emergency at hand overshadowed everything else. Before James could speak, the man took in the scene with intense focus. The ambulance's open hood, the flashing lights, James's desperate expression. "What's happening?" The deep voice cut through the rainfall with authority. "Engine's dead. I've got a critical child inside who needs to get to Riverside Memorial now," James explained, words tumbling out. "Nobody's stopping. You're the first. Please, I need help." The man's expression shifted instantly from concern to determination. Without hesitation, he strode toward the ambulance. "Let me see the kid first," he said, already moving with purpose. James led him inside, where Ethan lay connected to portable monitors, his small chest laboring with each breath. The large man assessed the situation with a surprising medical knowledge. "Oxygen saturation's too low," the man said, examining the monitor. "How long has he been like this?" James blinked in surprise at the technical observation. "Almost 15 minutes since it got critical. We need to move him now." The man nodded, rainwater dripping from his close-cropped hair. In the harsh emergency lights, James finally recognized him fully. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, one of the most famous actors in the world. The absurdity of the moment struck James, but there was no time to process it. "My truck can get us there faster than waiting for another ambulance," Johnson said decisively. "Can we safely move him with the equipment he needs?" James quickly calculated the risks. "The portable oxygen and monitors can transfer. We'd need to secure him properly, but—" "Then that's what we do," Johnson cut in, already moving toward the gurney. "Tell me what you need from me." Outside, the storm intensified, rain hammering against the ambulance roof like bullets. 3 more cars swept past, oblivious or unwilling to stop. Inside, however, hope had arrived in the most unexpected form. As Johnson helped James prepare the equipment for transfer, the paramedic realized this wasn't just about celebrity intervention. It was about the fundamental human choice to stop when others wouldn't. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Within minutes, they had transformed Johnson's spacious truck into a makeshift ambulance. The back seats had been folded down to create a flat surface where they carefully positioned Ethan's gurney, secured with seatbelts and the straps James normally used for helicopter transports. The portable oxygen tank and monitoring equipment sat firmly anchored beside the child. Johnson had worked with the efficiency of someone who understood emergency situations, asking precise questions and following James's instructions without hesitation. "The roads are flooding in sections," Johnson warned as they finished securing the equipment. "I saw a washout about 2 miles back. What's the fastest route to Riverside from here?" James climbed into the back with Ethan, maintaining his position as caregiver. "Stay on Highway 16 for another 8 miles, then take exit 34. It cuts through the hills. Emergency vehicles use it to avoid traffic." Johnson nodded, his expression grave as he took the driver's seat and activated the truck's advanced 4-wheel drive system. "I've done some off-road racing. This truck can handle conditions most vehicles can't. We'll get him there." The Raptor surged forward with surprising smoothness, its powerful engine conquering the flooded highway with ease. Johnson drove with intense concentration, hands steady on the wheel as he navigated through standing water. In the back, James monitored Ethan's vitals, adjusting the oxygen flow. The boy's condition was deteriorating, his oxygen saturation now at 84% despite the supplemental oxygen. "His stats are dropping," James called out, concern sharpening his voice. "We need to go faster if possible." Johnson immediately responded, accelerating the truck as much as safety allowed. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge, but Johnson drove with unwavering focus, leaning forward to peer through the wall of water. The truck's headlights illuminated a section of road ahead where a small stream had overflowed its banks, sending brown water rushing across the highway. "Hold tight," Johnson warned, gripping the wheel firmly. Without slowing, he guided the truck through the flood, water spraying up on both sides like a boat's wake. The vehicle barely seemed to notice the obstacle. "How's he doing?" "Not good," James replied, administering another breathing treatment. "His airways are constricting faster than the medication can work. If we don't get him to the hospital within 10 minutes, he might need intubation. I can't perform here." Johnson's jaw tightened. 8 minutes. We'll make it in 8. He took the upcoming turn at precisely the right speed to maintain control without losing momentum. Through the side window, James noticed they were now passing cars that had pulled over, unwilling to drive in the dangerous conditions. The irony wasn't lost on him. Those who could safely continue had stopped. while earlier, those who could have safely stopped had continued. Suddenly, the truck's headlights revealed a massive oak tree fallen across half the road ahead. Johnson reacted instantly, slowing just enough to navigate the narrow gap remaining. The truck scraped against the fallen branches, the sound of scratching paint audible even over the storm, but Johnson showed no concern for his vehicle. 5 more miles, James said, checking Ethan's pulse manually since the monitor readings were becoming erratic. The boy's heartbeat was rapid but weakening, a sign his body was struggling to compensate for the lack of oxygen. James adjusted the flow rate to maximum. "Talk to me about what happens when we arrive," Johnson said, his voice calm despite the intensity of his driving. "We need a plan." James appreciated the tactical thinking. "Pull directly to the emergency entrance. I'll call ahead now that we're in cell range." He pulled out his phone while keeping one hand on Ethan's wrist. "We'll need a trauma team ready with a pediatric intubation kit and breathing specialists." Johnson nodded, making the turn onto exit 34, a winding access road normally used by emergency vehicles. The truck's suspension absorbed the uneven terrain as Johnson handled each curve with precision. Ahead, the lights of Riverside Memorial Hospital appeared through the rain like a distant lighthouse. "Almost there, buddy," Johnson said softly, and James realized he was speaking to the unconscious child. "You just keep fighting." The monitor alarm suddenly blared. Ethan's oxygen levels had dropped to 79%. "He's crashing," James announced, immediately starting manual breathing assistance. "We have maybe 2 minutes before permanent damage. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk." Johnson's response was immediate. The truck accelerated to dangerous speeds as they approached the hospital. The final stretch of road had turned into a virtual river of muddy water, but the actor's hands remained steady on the wheel, his focus absolute. The vehicle fishtailed slightly on a curve, but Johnson corrected with expert precision, never losing control. "Almost there," he said, his voice tense but controlled. Hospital entrance in sight. James continued the manual breathing assistance, squeezing the bag in a steady rhythm that pushed oxygen into Ethan's failing lungs. The boy's lips had taken on a concerning blue tint, and his skin had become ashen. The cardiac monitor showed his heart rate becoming increasingly irregular, the telltale sign of a body on the verge of shutdown. "Come on, Ethan," James urged, using his free hand to call the hospital. When the emergency desk answered, his words came in rapid-fire precision. "This is paramedic Cortez. Inbound with pediatric respiratory failure, ambulance breakdown, arriving in civilian vehicle, need pediatric trauma team at entrance now." The truck skidded to a halt at the emergency entrance, tires sending up sheets of water. Before James could even look up from his patient, Johnson was out of the driver's seat and opening the rear door, rain pounding his massive frame. A team of medical personnel had already emerged from the hospital doors, confused by the unexpected arrival method. "Pediatric respiratory emergency," Johnson shouted, his commanding voice cutting through the confusion. The medical team hesitated momentarily upon recognizing him, but their training quickly overrode their surprise. 2 doctors and 3 nurses rushed forward with a gurney as Johnson and James carefully extracted Ethan from the truck. Rain pelted them all as they transferred the boy to the hospital gurney, James continuing manual breathing throughout the process while rattling off vital information. 8-year-old male, severe asthma exacerbated by pneumonia, oxygen saturation dropping below 80, unresponsive for approximately 12 minutes, respiratory arrest imminent. The lead doctor, a woman with silver-streaked hair, took command immediately. "Get him to Trauma 1. Prepare for immediate intubation." She glanced at Johnson, who was helping guide the gurney despite the staff's presence. "Sir, you'll need to—" "I'm staying with him," Johnson stated, Not a request, but a simple fact. Something in his expression, perhaps the same determination that had brought them through the storm, made the doctor nod in acceptance. As they rushed through the sliding doors, Ethan's monitor flatlined. His heart had stopped. "Code blue!" James called out. The medical team immediately shifted to resuscitation mode, a nurse beginning chest compressions as they continued moving. Johnson's face drained of color, but he continued helping guide the gurney down the hallway, his massive hands steady despite the chaos. The trauma room erupted into controlled chaos as the team transferred Ethan to the hospital bed. The lead doctor took over compressions while a respiratory specialist prepared intubation equipment. Johnson stepped back to allow the professional space, his massive frame pressed against the wall, rain still dripping from his clothes. "Charging defibrillator," a nurse announced. "Clear." Ethan's small body jerked as the electrical current passed through him. All eyes fixed on the monitor, which continued to show a flat line. The doctor resumed compressions immediately. Again. Charging. Clear. Another shock. Nothing. James felt his professional composure cracking, the accumulated stress of the night finally breaking through. He'd seen many patients lost, but children were always the hardest. He glanced at Johnson, who stood with his eyes locked on Ethan, lips moving in what appeared to be a silent prayer. "One more time," the doctor ordered, "and prepare epinephrine." "Clear." The third shock sent electricity through Ethan's heart as the medication entered his system simultaneously. For 3 excruciating seconds, nothing changed. Then a blip appeared on the monitor. Then another. A weak, irregular rhythm established itself, growing stronger with each beat. "We've got him back," the doctor announced, immediately focusing on securing Ethan's airway. Within moments, they had intubated the boy, the ventilator taking over the breathing that his body couldn't manage. Color slowly returned to his face as oxygen-rich blood began circulating again. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." 3 hours later, James sat in the hospital waiting room, his uniform still damp, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. The adrenaline had long since worn off, leaving him hollow and drained. Ethan had been stabilized and moved to the pediatric intensive care unit, his condition upgraded from critical to serious, but stable. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Johnson sat across from him, nursing a cup of hospital coffee, looking strangely ordinary despite his celebrity status. He'd refused to leave until Ethan's parents arrived and there was news about the boy's condition. The parents had arrived an hour ago, tearfully thanking both men before being escorted to their son's bedside. "You saved his life," James said finally, breaking the contemplative silence between them. "If you hadn't stopped, if you hadn't driven like that..." He let the alternative hang unspoken in the air. Johnson shook his head. "We saved him. You kept him alive until we got here. I just provided the transportation." He set down his cup, leaning forward, his expression earnest. "What bothers me is thinking about all those other cars that didn't stop." "People are afraid to get involved," James said, though the explanation felt hollow even to him. "They see trouble and drive the other way." "That's not strength," Johnson said, his deep voice quiet but intense. "I've spent my whole career playing strong men, heroes who punch the bad guys and save the day. But real strength isn't about muscles or fighting ability." He gestured toward the PICU where Ethan lay. "Real strength is stopping when everyone else drives by. It's putting yourself out there when it's inconvenient or scary or might mess up your schedule." A nurse approached them, smiling tentatively. "Mr. Johnson, the Millers, Ethan's parents, would like to see you if you're willing." Johnson stood immediately. "Of course." James watched as the actor followed the nurse down the hallway, his imposing physique somehow making the hospital corridors seem smaller. Despite his exhaustion, James felt compelled to follow. At the PICU entrance, he paused, watching through the glass as Johnson approached Ethan's bed. The boy was awake, weak but conscious, his eyes widening with recognition as Johnson entered. His parents stood nearby, the mother wiping tears, the father reaching out to shake Johnson's hand with both of his own. Even from a distance, James could see the profound gratitude in their expressions. What happened next surprised him. Instead of the brief celebrity encounter he expected, Johnson pulled up a chair beside Ethan's bed. He began talking animatedly with the boy, making him smile despite the breathing tubes. Soon, he was showing Ethan something on his phone, pictures or videos that made the child's face light up even in his weakened state. 2 days later, the story broke. Someone at the hospital had recognized Johnson and shared the story on social media. By morning, it had gone viral. The action star who had personally saved a child's life, not with spectacular stunts, but with the simple human act of stopping when others wouldn't. News vans gathered outside the hospital, but Johnson had already left, declining interviews about the incident. James watched the coverage from his apartment while on mandatory rest after the ordeal. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Real heroes wear uniforms, not movie costumes. You keep saving lives every day without cameras rolling. That's the real strength." DJ James smiled, setting down his phone as the news showed footage of the hospital where Ethan continued to recover. The reporter was interviewing a line of people standing in the rain outside the entrance. People who had been inspired to sign up as volunteer emergency drivers for the rural areas around Riverside. The program, dormant for years due to lack of interest, had suddenly received more volunteers than they could process. 3 cars had passed by that night in the storm, choosing not to stop. But because one did, dozens more were now stepping forward to ensure no one would be left stranded again. The true measure of strength, James realized as he watched more volunteers arrive on screen, isn't found in the ability to lift heavy weights or fight opponents. It isn't even found in celebrity status or public recognition. True strength is found in the moment of choice, the decision to stop when it's easier to drive by, to help when it's simpler to look away, to put someone else's needs above your own comfort. And that kind of strength, unlike physical power, can spread from person to person, growing stronger with each connection it makes. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think. You'll help us grow if you'll subscribe and get notifications on. And don't stop here. Click one of the videos on your screen and keep the journey going. See you in the next one.